Hello and welcome to Transform Tuesday, coming to you from snowy Boston, Massachusetts. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services here at Alpha Software, and today we're going to be talking, of course, about Alpha Transform. I'm also here to answer any questions that you may have, and you can type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. Before we get started, if someone could type into the chat window and let me know whether or not they can see my screen and whether or not they can hear my voice. If I hear that all is okay, then we're good, or you can put it in the questions box too. Let me take a look. Yep, and yes, excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So today's topic, let's skip down here to slide 267, is on responsive layout. Now, responsive layout, responsive design are features that we've had in Transform for 3, 4, maybe 5 months or so, but I realized that they weren't in the Transform User's Guide. They do appear in the help system, instructions on it, and it does cause some confusion the first time you go and try to use these features. So today I'm going to officially explain how to use responsive layout and responsive design. And let's start with just a quick discussion for those of you who don't know what responsive design is all about. Because on the internet and on different types of applications, screen sizes can vary tremendously. And as a result, the information that's displayed on a large screen may not be in the format that's suitable for a smaller screen. Now, I particularly like this graphic from iStock Photo, where they have shown this picture of, if you can imagine, this is a website it also applies for applications. So if you can imagine you had some blocks of text here, 3 blocks of text going across the screen here when you're on the desktop or on a laptop type of computer, notebook computer. But if you look over here at the tablet, you'll notice that instead of 3 columns, they've done 2 columns, and with a phone, it becomes 1 column. And with responsive design, your application or your website automatically responds to the size of screen that it's on. And screen size isn't just a question of the total size of the screen. It may have the difference between switching between portrait and landscape as well, with landscape, of course, giving you more horizontal space. So let's take a look and see how this actually applies to Alpha Transform. So let's imagine that we have created a form. In fact, I have created one here. I've called it Respondo. And in it, it's just collecting first, last name, city, state, zip, email address, phones. It's basically just contact information. Now, right here in this preview window, you can sort of ignore the rest of the screen. Right here in this preview window, if this were on a phone, this would actually be a pretty okay layout. It makes sense for you to move from place to place, and you're just going to scroll through. And this is a pretty typical way of navigating on a phone. On the other hand, if you were trying to display the same form on a tablet, it would work. But if you take a look, you're using up a lot of space that you don't need to be using. We could actually, for example, take the first name field and the last name field and put them on the same line. Address probably should have its own line, but city, state, and zip, those could be in 3 columns, for example. And as a result, you can fit a lot more on the screen, still comfortably, so that you can view more information at once without scrolling, which is one of the advantages to having a bigger screen in the first place. So the question is, so let's now reimagine this for a larger size device. And I've got an example right here where I've done just that. I've split the names. I've combined the names onto one line. I've combined city, state, and zip onto another line. Address I left as a full line. Email, and then cell phone and work number we've decided to do as 2. So that would be a nice design for a slightly bigger size format. So how do you do it? Well, today I'm going to show you. So we're going to go right into the live demonstration. And I'm going to pop over here to Transform. And here is my form. Let me just move this out of the way. Okay, so here is my form live. And now let's imagine what it's going to look like on a tablet. And we don't really have to do that much imagining because we have this little hamburger button down here at the bottom right corner. You may not have seen that before, but I'm going to click on that. And now I have some options: small, medium, large, and extra large. And that refers to screen size. Basically, small is a small cell phone, regular cell phone. Medium is one with a slightly bigger screen. So you can imagine like some of the S series from, if you're talking about Apple phones. Large can apply to a tablet, and extra large would apply to a desktop or notebook computer. So those are basically the sizes. I don't know the exact cutoff in terms of pixels, but it is designed pretty well where you move from one to the other. It does in fact know what screen size you're on. So when you do a layout, you can actually specify how it should look for each one of these screen sizes. So let's pop over to a medium screen size. I'm going to click medium. And you'll notice that right here, again, we have everything on separate lines. So let's start putting these together into lines. Now, the way we do that is using the layout part in command properties. So the layout is one of the settings here. And there's a couple ways of doing it. You can actually set the size of a particular field right here by using its layout box. And in this case, let me uncheck that. This is how it's set up by default: small, medium, large, extra large. These are all basically told to use the exact same pattern unless you tell it otherwise. So here we're going to say small is fine the way it is, but for a medium device, and I'm just going to show you medium for now, we can do the same with large and extra large, we would like to do this into multiple columns. So I could just say, okay, I'd like to have this in 2 columns. I'm going to click Save. And now it's done something, I forgot where was I, on the first name field, I guess. That is a little bit unexpected. I told it that I was going to have, I wanted to have this layout in 2 columns, but what I did specify was this particular field was 2 columns wide. Now, if you think that's confusing, it gets even more confusing as you start drilling down and trying to do these fields one by one. So I'm going to tell you, don't do it that way. This is what we're going to do instead. Instead, I'm going to leave this, I'm going to save this back to its default. So each one of my fields have a default layout. Oops, sorry. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to take my first name and last name fields and I'm going to wrap them into a section. So I've highlighted those 2 fields. I'm going to hit the plus button over here. I'm going to scroll down, and where it says section start, I'm actually going to click this enclose button so that it puts my start and my end tags here. Okay, so the first thing you've noticed is that these fields have become indented on the screen. That's actually not what I want. It's the default behavior, though, for a section. But we can change that. With the section start highlighted, I'm going to move the mouse over here to layout, and I'm going to click on layout, and I'm going to choose for my medium size that, first of all, I don't want it indented. So let's just try that. Now, when you're done making settings here, you might be tempted just to click away, which I'm going to do here. And you'll say, wow, nothing changed. And that's because, and I make this mistake a lot, which is why I'm going to point this out to you, whoops, is that when you're in the layout and you do make a change, for example, I'm going to set indent to no, you do need to click the save button. So I'm going to click save. And if you'll notice, first name and last name have now moved themselves back into position. Still not quite what I want. What I want is I actually want this section to take up the whole space so it can be full, but, so I can say full, but I want to divide it into 2 columns, 1, 2. And when I click save, it does what I want. There's first name on one side, last name on the other. Okay. Now, if you've seen that, you probably know how we're going to handle city, state, and zip. Again, I'm just going to click on those 3 fields to highlight them. I'm going to go up into the add command window. I'm going to scroll down to section start, and I'm going to click the enclose button. Okay. And again, they've indented. So I'm going to go into layout. I'm going to choose medium. And I'm going to say, no, I do not want it indented. I'm going to say I want the section to use the full amount of space, but within the section, I want to divide it into 1, 2, 3 columns. And I'm going to click save. And there's city, state, and zip. Email, I think, should take the amount of space that it has, in other words, the full line. But for the cell and work numbers, again, I'm just going to grab them, plus scroll down, put them in a section, click layout, medium. I want it to take up the full amount of space, but I want to divide it into 2 columns. And that's all there is to it. Oh, I didn't turn off indent. Shame on me. Let me adjust this. Indent is no. And save. And there we go. So that is how you do that. I don't think I have anything else beyond that one. Oh yeah, I do have one other thing to show you. So that's the basics of dividing things up so that you can get this type of layout with fields that will fit to arrive. Now let's pop back actually here to my browser, and I'm going to show you that this is in fact responsive. So if I go here and I say small, first, last, city, state. Oh, but look at this. These are indented, and that's because for this particular section, I forgot to tell it when it's small, I don't want it indented. Save. Same here. Go to this section, adjust it when it's small. I don't want the indent, so that's no. Save. And we'll scroll down here for this last section. Click there for small. Do not indent. Save. And there we've got the layout that we want for the phone. So we can again use the hamburger button here to switch to the medium size where we have multiple fields and multiple columns. Now, sometimes you may end up with a field or a form that you want to design kind of like this. Don't worry that you can't read the fields here. I'm just trying to, just in big blocks. Often, you might have a blank spot here, and for some reason that would be on a paper form. You might want to replicate that same thing here. You might want to have this space empty and stack your fields over here in this last position. And you absolutely can do that. And the way you do that is by, pop over here, by pointing out where it should start. So let's say for some weird reason I wanted first name and last name to be over here on the right in my medium-sized column. I could go over to section start. Let's see, I haven't tried this for this one, but basically you want to set the position. You want to say I want first name to start at the second position. And I want, oops, that's not what I wanted at all. Sorry, let me edit that. Put that back to next. Next is the default. I want to say is I want the first name field this time to start in the second position. There it is. And I want the last name field also to be in the second position. So I've clicked on that field and I'm going to say position number 2. And there we go. First name, last name. All right, so that's what I have to show here today. Let's take a look and see what we have here for questions. The first one is, can you change the size of each column in the section, i.e. address might need to be wider than the abbreviated city, state, and zip? Can you change the size? So yes, so in this case, the size of the column is always going to be specified. If you divided it up into a grid, which is basically what you're doing with the layout, it's going to be how many columns wide that field is. So for example, you could have created a section, say, that was 12 columns across, and you wanted the address to take up, say, half of that. You could set address to 6, since 6 is half of 12. So you can divide down the grid that way. The other question is, wouldn't it be better if the default for indent was to be switched off? That is probably, I think I could go either way on that, because often people are using this section starts specifically just to indent it, and they aren't using it for responsive design. So you know what, that might make sense. In fact, I think it might make sense once you check on a particular one to say, oh, I'm setting the layout. It should be bad. Actually, that's a really good suggestion. Let me write that down real quick. All right. Are there any other questions today? Nope, I don't see anyone typing. Great. Well, hey, thank you again for joining me for another Transform Tuesday. I hope to see you next week. Take care. And in the meantime, of course, please feel free to send questions to tfservice, that's transform service, @alphasoftware.com. Thanks again. Have a great week. Take care and goodbye.